So it's Jackson Hole, and it's wonderful that we're all going to be there. It's a different Jackson Hole. A couple of weeks ago, Joe Weisenthal was like, yeah, you know, another Jackson Hole. But this, like 07, 08, 09, maybe one since then, this is going to be interesting.
The rumor is that there's so much interest in this year's Jackson Hole, presumably because of the attacks on the Fed, that there's so much media coming that there isn't enough room in the lodge.
I told you that. I have to say
no,
that.
I
told you that. To Joe's credit, to Joe's credit, the reason
we heard it from our producers.
Right. The reason we were talking about that, I made the point earlier. The reason we were talking about that is because Joe has very kindly, very gentlemanly given up a room at the lodge because we don't have enough for the entire team.
So where are you staying?
He's staying
some other lodge, 30 minutes away.
So
I'm not complaining. I'm going to Jackson.
I'm
going to Jackson Hole.
My gut feeling is this is a very nice lodge with places to work out.
Huge pool. I'm not complaining.
One year you were in a pup tent. I remember this. You were out on the lawn.
No, it's not true.
Fox, CNBC, Bloomberg, and Lisa's pup tent.
All right, cut it out. Honestly, I think it'll be really interesting. I think this year is going to be fascinating to see how Jay Powell messages this going forward.
Can I bring up a theory that I have? Wouldn't this be an elegant place with all the heritage of the Fed that he announces that he's stepping aside or resigning here?
Really?
Why?
That seems like a long shot.
If you were anyone on the Fed, or if you were Jerome Powell, and you truly believe that one of the foremost things that America has going for it is central bank independence, that one of the things that we must cherish across years and years and years of this independence, is there anything, I mean, like, do you think that furthers the cause in some way?
Oh, no, I'm not saying I agree with it at all, but it's just the pressures are so great, and the pressures are even greater with a series of inflation reports into this meeting. I mean, this is real inflation we're confronting now.
Potentially more interesting could be Chris Waller and what comments he has after Fed Chair Jay Powell and how much unity Chair Powell actually tries to get.
Shows up.
Oh yeah, can you imagine if Myron? Maybe he
don't know if he's going or not.
Is he staying at your lodge?
Question.
He's
all the Trumpian candidates show up. Like, is Rick Reeder going to be there, and James Bullard, and the 400 others?
Besson is in the lounge talking about his desire for a 50 basis point cut.
I wonder if Rick Reeder thought he was Trumpian up until 24 hours ago, when his name suddenly got serviced as one of the 100 or 11 candidates theoretically slated as a possible replacement for Jerome
into this
Powell.
meeting. This is important. You guys just did a wonderful junket up to Alaska. Lisa and John didn't go. You went, but you talked to Mary Daly, who I have an incredible respect for, because Mary Daly grew up really tough. She didn't grow up like Jerome Powell or others at some fancy school. And what did Mary Daly say about the importance of this meeting?
Well, you know, we didn't actually talk Jackson Hole that much, but it was really interesting to hear. I mean, I am very impressed by Mary Daly, because regardless of what she thinks personally about the wisdom of tariffs or whatever, you know, here is someone who, at least in public rhetoric, is like, these are things beyond our control, and this is how we're going to take them into account. But whether they're good, they're bad, et cetera, it does not affect anything.
Well, she did make the point that, you know, Fed communication is going to become even more important here. And I think that's really the thing to look out for in Jackson Hole, because there's an optics problem now, right? No matter what the Fed does, if it chooses to cut rates because it legitimately sees a softening in the labor market and it thinks that maybe the risks of higher inflation are skewed to the downside, people are going to talk about, like, well, did they cave? Right, cave to pressure from Trump. And so Daly was saying, by the way, did you know she's a hobby welder?
I did not know that, but that doesn't surprise me, actually.
A hobby welder. She welds metal for
like
fun.
Really cool.
Seriously. But
I just figured out why you're staying in town. Is Light Sweet Crude playing the $1 Million Cowboy Bar?
The lodge is 30 minutes out of town, and then I'm staying 30 minutes beyond that.
So hold on a second.
Anyway.
This actually,
you're towards Jellystone Park?
It's on the border of Yellowstone.
Hold on a second. To build on that, why do you guys just go to cold, mountainous places to do your filming? Is this part of the Odd Lots experience?
It's Brooklyn. If you live in Brooklyn.
You go with the cowboy hat.
You always accuse me of living in Brooklyn. We both live in Manhattan.
It's the zeitgeist of Odd Lots. Lisa and I are doing a straight show. We got great. Do you have any guests yet? We have a wonderful lineup of people. Really,
what, is this
about the moment.
There's no competition.
You guys
one Bloomberg.
Tell us who you have, and we'll tell.
One Bloomberg. There's no competition.
I'll show you mine if I show you.
There's some great. It's gonna. I mean, there's a reason people like to go there. There's some big names.
There is. And also the other thing is with the time delay, Lisa and I are on later like we never are all year. And what it really means is we could slot in at the Pioneer Grill and get a manly breakfast.
Oh, yeah, manly breakfast. I love my manly breakfast.
Oh, they have good chili there. That's my favorite.
I like the oatmeal.
What are you guys going to be talking about? Like, what do you think are going to be the dominant themes?
Well, my personal question, the obvious point is Fed Chair Jay Powell versus President Trump. What will he say? The less obvious but equally important question that I have is, how are they going to change how they measure the labor market, given artificial intelligence, given immigration? That is the theme of this particular meeting, and I know that sounds a lot less sexy than will he or won't he step down, et cetera, but to me, that has the longest lasting consequences.
I think that's really important. And it actually feels a little surreal to me in conversations now where we talk about like, well, there's a whole nother, payrolls report before the September meeting and there's inflation data. It feels very surreal to be talking about the importance of that payroll report when we have a new BLS head who is like, well, do we need to publish the payrolls report at all?
Oh, yeah.
I'm more immediate. I think the speed of news flow is moving so fast, particularly on inflation, that I would link it literally into their dual mandate and what they do now that they've got a legitimate goods and service inflation if the labor market breaks. If we get that data.
What I'm really interested in is, the intellectual significance of central bank independence, and I do think that's what I'm going to be asking. Tom, reaching for props. I do think that I'm like...
That's a preview of the Jackson Hole look.
It's a Jackson Hole look.
Those actually look really good on you.
The sun doesn't come up for quite a while. I was actually listening to what you had to say.
It's fine. It's fine. I was looking at Tom. But it's like, what is central bank independence? Why is it valuable? Even if it's formally retained in law, does it diminish when it's subject to so much pressure? How important is, regardless of the actual policy that a Fed sets at any given time, how much does independence itself constrain inflation because people know that there's this entity out there counteracting this cycle? I really want to learn more about it.
I think you're dead on. The history of this is J.P. Morgan's library, the panic of '07, personal story for our family. We were crushed in it. And then you get out to 1935 where the Treasury ran the shop. And then you move on to 1951 and McChesney Martin, where this independence was codified, essentially. And from there, does that 51 agreement break? That's the underlying story.